Good morning and welcome. Today is August 13th. You've joined the Kubeflow community call. That's August 13th, 2024. And do want to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded and it is governed by the Kubeflow Code of Conduct. Typically, we work off an agenda. If anybody has any topics that they want to add to the agenda, feel free to shout them out. We typically start with the release update. I think we may have Ricardo here.
Yes, I'm here, Josh. Still talking about 1.9. We finished the retrospective meetings last week, and I reported a PR to document all of our retrospective items for 1.9 into the community repo. So please take a look and review so we can get the retrospective document added to the community repo. I'm trying to find out the PR for that, but I kind of lost it. Okay, I got it. Let me add to the meeting notes. So retro meeting notes. Okay, that's it. Feel free to review it, and please, if possible, LDTM approve it so we can get this document for our experience with 1.9. Just a note to all working group leads that's in the meeting. Please let me know if there are any bug reports you believe it's critical and requires a new component release for your working group. Let me know, and then we can discuss in the upcoming release team meetings for the need of a patch release for 1.9. We'll be monitoring that for the next 1-2 months. And if we believe there's no need for any patch release, we're gonna bump all of the bug reports to the 1.10 release. Speaking of which, we're calling for volunteers to join the next release team for the 1.10 release. I just raised the issue. It's in the meeting notes. So if you're interested to volunteer yourself for the next Kubeflow 1.10 release team, feel free to comment in that issue and let us know which working group would like to take or which is the role you would like to take. There is the release manager for the next release team. There is we're adding a new role in this team called the release manager shadowing. So we're gonna kind of train someone else to become the next release manager for potentially the 1.11, 1.12, whatever. And there's the product manager, which I have no idea if Stefano would like to step in the 1.10 release team. But yeah, it's still open to anyone to join whatever is the role for the 1.10 release team. I think that's it. I'll open the floor for any questions or comments.
Quick question about the PR to add the 1.9 video. Do we normally upload it to the Kubeflow channel or the Kubeflow community channel, which is the new one? The release update.
I've updated it. I've uploaded it as unlisted to the Kubeflow community channel, but I have no problem if Amber or somebody wants to download it from that YouTube channel and upload it to the other channel. I'm fine either way.
Because yeah, I think we normally use at least historically, we've used the Kubeflow actual channel. I mean, it depends on just what we want to do, Josh, I guess.
I think we should upload it to the main channel.
I think so too, personally. And I mean, also, if you want, I can give you a very quick recording of the part that you want me to.
Then that would be awesome, because if you want, then I can do it instead of the overlay of the video. And then actually I can use YouTube as a way to share the video with Amber. because I don't have access to the other channel, or I don't know if somebody can give me like a moderator access to upload the video directly where you want me to upload. I'm fine either way.
I don't know who has access to upload to the main channel, but
Yeah, let's figure out that after the meeting.
cool.
I know who has access, so I think James has access. Just reach out to me once video is ready, so we can upload it to the YouTube.
Awesome. Good to know. Thanks, Andrew. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I lost the screen sharing here. Okay, it's back. All right. Thank you, guys. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess we can keep moving forward. If folks don't have any questions, I'm very much interested in Notebooks 2.0,
Yes.
and both from a timing standpoint and feature standpoint. So
Yes.
what's up with Mr. Matthews' group today?
Yeah, hey. So, we are, if you are not familiar, working on, let me just get the actual issue so that it can, so people can follow it if they want.
Do you want to take screen share or?
Well, mostly what I'm just doing, I want to show people, how they can contribute.
Okay.
But let me just, link the issue for you. Okay, there we go. So that's the new repo. So if you are familiar, if you like notebooks, then give that repo a star. It's not where the current notebooks 1.0 code lives, but if you don't, but it will be soon. Notebooks 2.0 will also live in this repo once it exists, and that's the branch there that it's like so new notebooks repo. That's the one thing I want you to know about. And then also the Notebooks 2.0 branch. This branch obviously is more of a development branch, the one that he's on right now. I can quickly show you the three kind of things that are being worked on. I'll share it if you want. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, let me just, where is the screen window?
Sometimes seeing the UI even helps even more, but yeah.
Yeah, the UI is probably not ready to show quite yet. Okay, so the issue that you should follow if you are interested in Notebooks 2.0, there's a bit of FAQ on here, is this issue here, 7156 on the Kubeflow repo. I linked it in the doc. It gives a brief overview of what's going on. The general motivation, if you haven't seen it, is that the current Notebooks 1.0 experience is, while it solves a really big problem and it is widely used as a result, there are improvements that can be made both to the UI and the experience of admins and users alike. Both there's a lot of things that you could kind of hack in right now that are that we believe we can make more serious, abstractions to make, for example, changing how security contexts work and things like that. But the end result for an end user is that rather than having to deal with the pod spec directly, and this is just for the first release of Notebooks 2.0, there will be some interesting things coming after that, that no longer would you have to think about as a user what sort of pod requests, affinities, and other things might be necessary to spawn with this particular GPU, for example. And similarly, as an admin, you can ensure that certain types of images have more relationships to certain types of pod requests. For example, you don't want to have a non-CUDA image being scheduled on a CUDA GPU, for example, things like that. So the things that, so there's a design document as well, which is quite long, and if you're interested, you can read it, but let me just design doc. So the parts that we've been working on most heavily are the controller. So this is the part that I'll just give a very, very quick example. So the controller exists, but I'll just give you a quick example of the CRD. And the CRD, if you're not familiar, is just the new kind of resource. So we've got a workspace and a workspace kind resource. These are the resources that you'll be working with rather than the notebook CRD. which is in the existing Kubeflow Notebooks 1.0. So a very basic example is down here. So so I'll start with the workspace. Although the admins would be starting by defining the workspace kind. So this is the one that corresponds to when a user wants to start an IDE in a Kubernetes cluster. This is what the UI will help them create. They don't have to work on the YAML directly, obviously. You can, but this is not intended. So it's got some, the spec is now not a wrapper around pod spec. That's the most important thing to understand. And what I mean by that is previously a notebook literally was just a pod in a Kubernetes sense. And so what that meant was that the UI was just rendering from a UI to a pod. Whereas now, instead, there are different kinds of workspace that are defined by your admin. For example, Jupyter Lab. Doesn't have to be an IDE. It could be Jupyter Lab with PyTorch and your own custom packages or something like that. And that's the group, if you will, of workspace type. And then initially, the first type, I know that sounds a bit funny, is going to be called a pod template. A pod template will be around replacing the existing notebook functionality. As a hint of what might come next, we're definitely planning on doing VM targets. So for example, if you're running a KubeVirt cluster, or if you're doing, probably the target will be KubeVirt, but for example, if you want true VM performance rather than any kind of Kubernetes cluster between you and the notebook, that will be kind of a future thing. And there's also some discussion about having more complicated, not just single pod stuff. But honestly, as we've started to build it, I think that's less likely, given how complex even doing a single notebook pod is. But so the end user, pretty much they only care about three things. They only care about volumes, which are their home directory and data, and then the two options that are available, which is image and pod. And now the question becomes, what the heck are these two things? These two things are the core piece of what a workspace is. So I'll just show you that, and then we can ask any questions. So a workspace kind is something that both we will provide examples of, sample ones, in addition to admins of Kubeflow clusters being able to create their own ones. This one is an example of a notebook for Jupyter Lab. There's no specific kind of Jupyter Lab here. This is just Jupyter Lab. This is kind of just how it's represented in the UI. This is the actual pod template that we talked about before. And then some of these stuff are common to every workspace in this kind, and other ones are those options that we talked about. So for example, if we go down to options now, this is the ones for the image config. And so this is a little bit hard to read if you're not super familiar with YAML, but the general idea here is there is a default, and then these are the options that are available to the user, not all of which may be presented in the UI. And then there's kind of elements here that help you as an admin make the UI cleaner, so you can have a grid comparison. Let's say you can have your own labels. Say your company cares about the version of Python, and it cares about the version of TensorFlow or PyTorch, whatever it is. You can add labels for that, and then they can appear as a grid in the UI when the user is picking from potentially hundreds of images that might be available. But the coolest thing is this redirect feature. So right now in Kubeflow notebooks, when an admin or company for either security or just update reasons wants to tell all their users they need to update their image, the only way right now is to either manually patch every notebook in your cluster, which would be disruptive, obviously, to the users, that would restart them, or it would be to have every user delete them and then use the UI to recreate them with the new version. What this does is this says this ID here, which actually corresponds to this image, which is in this case just the upstream 1.8 Jupyter image that we made. This can be saying it's redirected to this ID. And so this ID here is actually the 1.9 image. So what happens in the UI when this is set is any workspace that is currently using 1.8 will see a warning that says, but next time this workspace is restarted, this is going to be updated to this version of the image. And of course, if the admin allows it, the users can defer their updates, just similar to how you would with a laptop update in a sense, because this is kind of like their laptop. I kind of view these workspaces for a lot of users as obviously they might have 10 of them rather than just one, but so there is a case to be made to stop. But if you don't want to allow deferring of update, that is possible too. You can chain the updates. Anyway, okay, so then the last part that's really cool is these pod configs. So users don't think about requests, affinities, and they don't want to think about the structure of the cluster that you're spawning on. The admin knows all these things and can instead say, I know that to get an NVIDIA GPU or an AMD GPU or an Intel thing on my pod, I need to make these requests, and I need to have these affinities, and I need to have these other things. So effectively, the end user should, in my mind, be seeing things like, oh, this one is just called tiny CPU. That's an option. Small CPU is another option. And big GPU, obviously you can give these any name you want. But similarly, there'll be labels, and then there's a single spec that corresponds to that. Yep, and then there's a few other cool things that happen, but I'll just quickly overview what the current status is, and then I'll open for any questions. So the current status is that the controller is largely complete. It's not quite ready. Please don't go use it. There's a few pieces missing, especially around security, validation, stuff like that. When I say security, I said security and validation. Anyway, so there's kind of two major pieces missing. There's a validation webhook that will ensure that some of these more complicated interactions between these options are not presented to the cluster. So for example, if you redirect to something that doesn't exist, we need to prevent you from doing that. If you try and update the spec of an existing ID that is currently being used, we will reject that. Things like that. So there's some complicated validations that need to take place that we haven't done yet. And then there's also a culling. The culling piece has not been implemented yet. And so the culling piece, that is actually interesting as well. If you're familiar with notebooks, I'll just quickly show you. So right now, the only culling option in Kubeflow notebooks is Jupyter, meaning we directly integrate with the Jupyter API. However, that does not work for RStudio, VS Code, or any custom IDE you might be using. So instead, we've also added another option for culling, which is saying like pausing a notebook that's not in use, to say admins can define their own arbitrary API command call that will, if it returns a certain code, say, is this notebook currently active? And then you can set all your normal probes. Yeah. And so the current status is that we have end-to-end tests that work for a lot of these. There is one piece missing. Actually, there's three pieces missing. Sorry. There's the culling, which is what I just talked about. There is an Istio piece that just needs to be added. And then there is the validation webhook. But we are working on those things, and they will be coming in hopefully the next week or two. But probably not the culling piece, but the validation in Istio. And so from your contributors' perspective, if you are interested, so the other two pieces, the back end and the front end, there are people who are planning to work on those, but they haven't been significantly worked on yet because the controller is kind of required to do them. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to open up to any questions if people want to ask or state things.
Yes, when we initially wrote this architecture document a long time ago, I was thinking about how is the number of kinds completely arbitrary? For example, can I create a kind label studio and it will automatically appear in a selection in the UI, or will there be some limits?
Yeah, so right now there's an assumption that workspace kind, I didn't say it, sorry, is a cluster resource, meaning that at least initially there'll be no way of restricting which profiles or people have access to each kind. But yes, there's no limit. It'll be an arbitrary list. If the list has 50 things, that's fine, you know?
And the second comment I had on the architecture was about just some minor functionality that, yes, there is activity checking or even user-defined or admin-defined activity checking with the API endpoint you provide. But I'm wondering, is it possible to set a soft and a hard limit? For example, a soft limit for when the notebook is not active for the soft limit, it's stopped, or the workspace. And if it hits the hard limit, it's stopped whether it's active or not.
I'm not quite sure what a hard limit in this case would mean.
Yeah, for example, you don't want users, you have a few hundred users and you don't want them to run work in Jupyter Labs instead of creating proper Kubeflow pipelines, for example. There might be some business requirements to force stop workspaces after 24 hours or so, even if to migrate users away from abusing them for long running jobs, for example.
I mean, you could kind of hack that in right now by just making a check that a cull that happens after 24 hours and then having this always return that it's inactive, I guess. But or you could even just have a button that they have to press or something like that, you know, that you could easily implement that using this even. But this is something that we've talked about, which is having a time to live that that is like the user has to actively extend it, right? That they have to press a button to say, yes, I do want to continue using this, but they can't, whether or not it's active. That is a discussion. But again, these are definitely things you could hack in yourself in the short term. So I don't think that's a huge problem. But yeah. Ricardo? You're muted, Ricardo.
Yeah, sorry. So one question about the, I don't know if you had the chance to take a look at the some scalability things about the workspace and workspace kind CRs, but do you believe there is a hard limit for workspaces to be created in a cluster without overloading the etcd?
I'm not sure there would be any etcd concern other than because a workspace in its current definition becomes a stateful set and then which becomes a pod. So I would be surprised if you wouldn't hit pod limits on your cluster before you hit etcd limits. But there is a chance that the way that the controller is written might not scale right now, but that's something that we could fix. I'm sure that there's if there's scalability problems. It is a little bit different to the current implementation, but it's not really worth going into exactly how it changed. But yeah, I think it should. I would be surprised if you hit etcd limits before you hit pod limits.
But shouldn't it be somewhat a linear factor of what we currently have, more or less?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but in the sense that the number of API calls, it is slightly higher, but it's not that much higher. For running the controller, I mean. Just because there's a kind now, it has to sync the kind and stuff like that. But it's very smart. KubeBuilder is very smart. It caches everything. It's not making requests that it doesn't need to. It has been designed quite carefully, the controller, to be clear. Yep. Anyway. Julius? Yeah. I'm sorry, Josh, I assume you're...
Yeah, I have some questions, but go ahead, Julius, you have a question?
He just said something, so yeah. Yeah.
Okay, no. Yeah, for example, also the current implementation of workspaces or notebooks 1.0, if you create one malformed specification, for example, a notebook, and it crashes the whole controller and blocks it for the whole cluster, will the new controller be a bit more resilient there?
It's not really, that would be a bug in my definition.
Yeah.
There's pretty extreme validation on the CID itself, but there will be even more validation, which is what we're talking about with the webhooks. There's nothing likely that you could, even if anything happens to somehow get through, there's code in the controller to handle, let's say you do somehow end up with an invalid redirect, even because our webhook doesn't exist. It will just has an error state that's clean. And so there's like, under the workspace, this is quite useful now, is rather than having to look at the pods and other things, we propagate everything you might need to know into the enter our status field of the workspace as well. That includes information about the actual pods, stateful set, and other things. And it's not really meant for machine use, but there is a kind of defined structure to this.
So if someone would create a malform, would be able to circumvent this and create a malformed custom resource, would the controller just ignore it at some point and move over to the next custom resource in the next namespace, for example?
Well, it would happen. The controller works by receiving events, if you will. So it listens, not events as in Kubernetes events, but it listens for reconciliation triggers, and then also does one every 10 hours. That's kind of the default of KubeBuilder. But anyway, so it should be fine. As what I'm saying, it's fine. I don't think there's no concern there. And if there is a problem, we can fix it. You know, it's a bug. That's a bug. Okay, cool. Yeah, Josh?
So I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to try to narrow them down. So my concern probably more about, and this is really great work, by the way, testing, documentation, training, and transition. So how long do you expect Kubeflow 1.0 and 2.0 to kind of live?
So this is a good question. So the current plan is that whenever the first release happens, that we have a fully end-to-end ready version of Notebooks 2.0, which hopefully will be 1.10, but you know, who knows, things happen. That release would be the way I expect it is that there would be an optional 2.0 version to be included. So you could continue to use 1.0 and then optionally deploy 2.0 so that we can get feedback, and would say that, you know, it's not, at that point, it would likely not be, you know, fully production ready. So just confirm. Some users might be accepting that and other users might not, so they can either keep using 1.0. The reason for allowing both to be deployed in the first release and second release is that we want people to be able to migrate their users across. And so that means both need to be able to be deployed in the same cluster. And the plan would be that the first release is optional 2.0, the next release is default 2.0, and then the last release is we break support for 1.0 and 2.0 to be together. So they actually won't be allowed to be deployed at the same time in 1.12 or 11, whatever that turns out to be. That would be my expectation.
Okay. And then will you be able to run 1.0 stuff on 2.0, or you're going to have to rewrite?
So that's a really good question. So yes, you can do that. That's exactly what we're doing in our testing, and we don't have plans to break it. Because 2.0 is much more configurable, effectively, you have to set a few things that would, like there's more possibilities in 2.0. So you can just set the possibilities that correspond to the 1.0 situation, and then use your images from 1.0 in it. So for example, the 1.0 images assume that you have an environment variable called NB prefix, and we have a special templated value that will give you exactly the value that it used to have. There is a little bit of extra complexity because in the 2.0, you can actually have multiple IDEs on the same notebook rather than just one. So that means that multiple ports could be listening. So there's an ID for a particular port. And in that case, when you're doing backwards compatible, you just have to define a single port and then say, I want MB prefix to be that. There's, yeah, and there's a few other ones that are similar. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. FS group would need to be 100. Yeah, that would be the other thing.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of features such as calling or whatever, people both from an administrative and a user standpoint have probably kind of figured out some of these features, and, you know, it's fine if they change. So let me ask you this. Is there anything in 2.0, and the last question, that will make GPU management any more flexible? So maybe multiple GPUs or fractional GPU, anything like that this exposes that makes things easier?
So yeah, so this is definite. So there is one thing that people might be concerned about here. It's way better for what you're saying in the real world. Like admins don't want users doing strange things usually. So they would most admins would prefer to define specific templates for their pods that they want their users to be able to use. There is and so for example, like you're saying, fractional GPUs are impossible right now, largely. Not technically, but largely impossible. This would be very simple in 2.0. All you would do is just define a new pod config, which would be big GPU with 4.5 GPUs. I don't know. And then the way that fractional GPUs are typically done would be it could be done under limits or it could be done under affinity. Either would work. But still the other things that would have to be aligned to it would still probably be a requirement, which is exactly why 2.0 is important, because most companies would have taint on nodes which have GPUs. But so yes, the answer is that we are slightly taking away some of the user agency and giving it to the admin. There is a discussion about making an arbitrary option, if you will, like the existing 1.0, but at least initially, I'm hesitant to do that just because I don't think there's a situation where that makes sense in a real world. Like that admins should be defining the types of things that the users can do, and if the user is effectively an admin, they can just define their own one, right? That's kind of what I'm saying. And there is one other thing, which is that some of these configs might feel very duplicative. And as a result, we do have a plan to kind of help you define common ones across all of your workspace kinds. But in reality, honestly, a lot of notebook image types are actually going to be quite specific to the thing that they're requesting. You don't want to give an AMD GPU image an option to spawn on an NVIDIA GPU. Or similarly, you don't want there are situations where a package that's designed for distributed computing might be able to spawn a bigger notebook than a one that's not, something like that. But yeah.
All right, so you're putting in administrative controlled guardrails, basically, which takes some of the user configurability away, but hopefully makes the user experience better.
Yeah, it's similar to if you go on to a cloud provider and they've got defined instance types. You can't make an arbitrary sized instance on most cloud providers. You can, but usually they prefer you don't do it.
All right. Any other questions on Notebooks 2.0? How do we know, how will we see it in 1.0? What's the milestone that we should be tracking for 1.10?
Yeah, so the controller being finished is obviously the first thing. That would make it technically usable in a sense. The backend and front end UIs, which are for the front end and the back end for the front end, would be required for the actual shipping of the product. And those are being worked on by some people. But if you're interested in contributing, just for reference, the backend is written in KubeBuilder with Go language. The backend API, which is for the front end, is written in Go as well. And the front end is written in React. So if you are interested in contributing, please comment on this issue. Hey, yes, Julius.
I think it's also interesting to note that you set the default security context to runners on boot, disallow privileged containers, and so on.
Yes. So that's just for this example, and because that's now supported by the upstream images, previously it wasn't. But yes, these are the defaults of this one, which is a good default, I think.
Oh, yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So if you have React experience, especially, or just Go experience, I would love to talk to you. Please message me on the Slack, or I'm on the CNCF Slack, Matthew X, or on the issue. Awesome. Thanks, Josh, for your time giving me.
Wow, a lot of great work there. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you to everybody on the Notebooks working group. GSOC.
All right. Thank you, Josh. As you probably are, I just want to be a reminder for all the mentors that if your project is designated as a large project, I think the the evaluation period is coming to an end. I think September 2nd or 9th is the dates I think I saw, but there is an option to extend in 2-week increments. If you and your student is okay with it, just please reach out to me. I would be able to extend those projects a little longer so that you have a little more time for them to contribute towards it. I hope that your students and mentors are really making use of their time and they're contributing very well to the Kubeflow community, and they are learning a good deal. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing too many contributors in the community call here to give feedback, but I would love to see if they are coming to an end. Maybe one of the this meeting, they come in and we give 5 minutes, 10 minutes to each student to showcase their work, what they have done as a reward, and that would be cool. So please, mentors, please take a look at the projects, talk to your students, at least see that they are open to that, and maybe you guys can work towards it. And if we're gonna do that, I would love to do that sometime in September, towards the end of September. That would be where most of the projects will be coming to an end. If you need more time, again, please let me know, because you won't see it in your screens, but I can able to adjust it. And once it passes certain deadline, I can't adjust it anymore. You have to do it. If student wants to do it, they can extend. They can keep there and working with you, but there isn't any official deadlines. Then you would have to write your final evaluation, all those things, as the GSOC website shows right now. So, yeah, please take a moment, see where you guys are in terms of how much progress you guys have made, what's left over, have that one-on-one conversation with your mentee, see how much more they need. If you think that if it needs more time, let's give them a couple extra weeks to get these things go through and showcase their work. Any questions on that? My aim is to give them a good experience from the Kubeflow community perspective, so that they can keep coming back. They can keep here, they be here and keep contributing further, and also make it a good template for next 2 years. If no questions, yep. Thank you, Josh, for the opportunity. Back to you.
Yeah, I think just want to reinforce the good work here, and also thank Google for helping to sponsor this. It definitely, I do think that feedback loop is important, and giving the contributors exposure if they want it. We should try. So there you go. Zoom access for Julius and others. The 1Password, I don't believe, allows people to. I think we have to have somebody who has admin access. I think it may be you, Matthew. Is that right?
We just need to. Is he on the 1Password at all, or is?
Yes, I am, but Josh couldn't give me access to the Zoom bridge inside this account.
Oh yeah. Let me just check what's happening there.
Yeah, I think Ricardo needs it too. I think both of them should have access, right, Ricardo?
What meeting is it for?
Kubeflow platform, then Ricardo, then Kimona's, probably some people.
I mean, Kimona's has already got it. I think. The only one, so like we can schedule the meeting for you. It can be a little bit confusing to schedule without breaking it. So I can add you as so you have the password, but I just it can be a bit confusing to actually schedule the meeting without breaking stuff. So I can help you do that if you want.
yes, please. It would be just a pull request afterwards in the, I mean, just one-on-one copy of the existing one and the pull request probably in the Kubeflow community calendar or so.
Yeah, that part's all fine. I'm just meaning like in the actual Zoom account, it can be just a bit confusing. But yeah, I can add you right now if you are actually a member of the 1Password. Let me just check if you are. Okay, cool. I can look at that. We don't need to wait.
Okay, and Ricardo too, right?
Yeah, for that I have a question. I believe you guys want to add myself access to that because I'm the release manager, but this is a role that could be rotated across the Kubeflow contributors. And my only concern is that if that 1Password access will be shared across all other contributors, I'm afraid we're gonna expose too much, sensitive information across these contributors. Is there a way to have one separate 1Password account that could be shareable across the release managers in that rotation manner?
So wait, so you're talking specifically about the release meeting also being on there. I was thinking about Julius, but you're talking about adding the release meeting as well, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, so I haven't reached out to the CNCF about adding another account. I do. We don't strictly need it. I mean, so it is a problem, obviously, having people have access to it. It means they could join this meeting and accidentally be the host of this meeting or any other meeting. But I think it's probably fine in most cases. But like the worst that could happen is we just have to change the password, and remove someone from the account, you know, which we might do regularly anyway. That might be a good idea to do that. But we could ask the CNCF for another paid account and make it a co-host of every meeting. But I think that might just get confusing, to be honest. I think it should be fine, Ricardo.
Okay, that's great. Also, we need to keep in mind that this is something that we will probably be a recurrent task across releases because we need to add another person to become the host for the release team meetings.
Yeah, so me and James Wu have the ability to do it. So if you ever need that, just do that. Okay, so I can give other people access to do it as well, but it's just it also gives you the ability to edit the passwords and potentially break stuff. So that's just the main reason I didn't give it to lots and lots of people.
Well, we need somebody for the model registry too, right? So who's setting up the model registry calls at this point?
Isn't that just a shared WG data meeting?
No, I mean we run bi-weekly on Mondays a model registry community calls run by Matthew.
Mateo, yeah, okay. And you've got access, Mateo, right? Or yeah, you do.
I've had the 1Password invite accepted, but I don't have the way to kind of like kickstart the Zoom bridge.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so I can see you in the account. So who doesn't have access to 1Password just while we're here? So Ricardo, do you have it? No. Can you message me your email that you want to use for it? Don't message it in the public chat, please. And who else is missing it? So Julius, you have it. I can see. Anyone else missing access that needs it? To the
Maybe you can add me to Matthew.
Are you a host of a meeting?
I will be part of WG data.
Or wait, once you start hosting a meeting, I can add you.
Okay.
I can add you to the 1Password, but that's just, you know, meaningless if you don't have anything in there.
All right.
Okay. Also, by the way, for other references, we can make other sensitive sharing things through the 1Password. It's not just accounts, you know, other credentials. You can even access things that would be through a secret manager that we could connect to GitHub Actions and things as well. So if that ever is something that working groups want to do, we can create you a working group specific section, if you will. Which is the other reason why we don't want too many people having root access, because they would have access to everything. So yeah.
Is there some I really like the per working group access, but I would also like to know, is there some continuity? For example, does the KC have access or the CNCF?
Yeah. So yeah. So both the 1Password company, which is sponsoring it, could give a new person access if everyone died who had access or something. And also the it's me and James Wu right now who have admin, but again, you can just reach out to 1Password if both of us die or something. Probably Josh would be the easiest person to reach out because he's already an admin on it.
He tried to add me, but he wasn't able to, so I'm not so
Ye-
sure about that.
Yeah, I think he's technically listed as an admin, but not like a super admin. But yeah. In any case, like the only reason I'm hesitant, it's not that I don't trust Josh. It's just that I don't want to add any more root owners because I want people to be able to use the 1Password as their working group secrets, but not have any other random people be able to have access to them. But like we can add it if Josh really wants root access, I can give it to him. But that's yeah.
We may at least one more or two more of the KFC, maybe Yuan and Andre, but up to them. We can take this offline. Let's keep moving because we got other stuff to get on, but it would be nice to have some type of policy or rules around that makes sense. Okay. Model registry update.
I don't know if Ramesh put this line item if they wanted to send something in particular. I think the update from the last bi-weekly meeting is that we are progressing on the definition for the roadmap for the 1.10. We have some items that we are discussing that one for the roadmaps. I'm going to pick what is the issue tracker that we're using for the roadmap so that if anybody is interested, I welcome them to join us in the bi-weekly meeting. We went through some recap of it in our last Monday meeting. Thank you.
Hey, I have a question for the model registry and the notebooks working group. Would you guys rather have 1.10 before or after the holiday?
1.10, if I remember correctly, those should land approximately in February. If I take by the same time that 1.9 went through, or
Yeah, but does that mean we only have one release this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's always the question
That's
as to
okay.
whether
I don't think that's bad. I'm just trying to figure out what's comfortable for you guys. It doesn't sound like either one of them is going to be near a GA quality at this. I mean, maybe model registry is getting closer, but I think it's going to need a little bit longer to go. So would a November, December timeframe, hey, that's what we've got ready by November. Would that make any sense? Or is that too much pressure at the end of the year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's also the question of whether we should have like the versioning part of Kubeflow is always interesting, right? Like Kubeflow pipelines will probably keep releasing new versions. Notebooks may also release new versions, but less likely. Everyone else probably will as well. So yeah, I guess if there's enough new versions available, it would make sense to do a release, but yeah.
Ramesh?
Thank you. I think maybe we can do some small incremental features there, Josh, towards November. But we are still making progress towards UI. We got a couple other big features we are planning towards. So November will be really tight, in my opinion. We can probably get some I mean, what are you suggesting whether to release a model registry?
Well,
Component,
here's
or
kind of my,
are you thinking more of a Kubeflow 1.10 and November time?
I'm just trying to figure out where the long poles are in the tent, and I'm kind of thinking that if we need 2 or 3 more releases and things, you know, do we wait longer and make the test cycle bigger, or we have shorter and shorter test cycles? I don't know if it makes any difference at all. But in some cases, you know, if we go to 1 release a year, okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure that everybody's, you know, eyes wide open as we go to that. February's fine. I think it's comfortable. We've done it many times. We don't get pressed on trying to get everything out before the end of the year and everybody, you know, hair on fire. But maybe there's a shorter release that tees up with November that gives us stuff to talk about in KubeCon. That's, you know, hey, you know, this is what we got between now and October, and we're finishing up in November, and it draws in more people because we have new things to talk about. I don't care either way. We can play it either way. I'm just trying to get people's feel where we're at.
I mean, realistically, given the workload, even with the improved CI/CD and relying on automatic tests, what you might be able to get until November is the Kubeflow 1.9.1, if it makes sense. And 1.10 you will probably not get before February, maybe even March. This is just my subjective personal experience, or based on previous experience.
Yeah, and this is not to say that working groups can't release new versions of their tools that are sooner than then. And then this is like, because in my mind, the overall 1.x versions are kind of just these collective versions that we try and make work together.
That all makes sense, and it feels about right. I just trying to see if it makes any sense, because KubeCon is a major thing, and we want to make sure that we have something to talk about at KubeCon. 1.9 is fine. Let's keep going. Sorry to get off track on the model registry.
An alpha version, maybe Josh, just an alpha version of one of the things that we're talking about here might be enough to talk about something.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that would, I think, help us in interaction. Like, hey, you know, we're finishing up on model registry. Here's kind of some of the things. Here's the notebooks. You know, we need some feedback before we finish those up, or even, you know, trusty AI, right? So.
Right. So we can even talk about what's coming up. You know, by November we would be pretty far along, at least further along than where we are right now with the UI, Josh, and a couple other major features. We should be, you know, further along. Hopefully, you know, even it's not under a tagged release like 1.10, you know, we could still have a intermediate releases of just the component of model registry, and we could definitely take that to the KubeCon conversations, talks.
All right.
That's definitely on the table.
What are we trying to get done with trusty AI? I know we've only got a few minutes left. I'm trying to move fast here. I'm sorry, I got off track.
Yeah, Rui is here. Maybe Rui, you can.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks very much. So yeah, my name is Rui. I'm from the Trust AI team, for anyone that wasn't here on the previous time I presented. So about a month ago, I presented the Trust AI project to the Kubeflow community, and I just wanted to pick up the conversation. So we opened an issue requesting feedback on the Kubeflow community repo, along with the thread on the Kubeflow discussion mailing list. And we got some feedback and some questions, notably from Stefano, but we didn't get many more feedback or other questions. So, I mean, from the Trust AI project, I was just wondering what the next steps can be, and what can we do to increase the visibility of our proposal, and also what can we do to move this discussion forward.
So we discussed this and some other things in the KFC and the Kubeflow steering committee about trying to make a process for new software and having some initial way for, let's say that we did accept how it becomes from kind of an add-on into a core. And we also discussed about what if there are multiple projects in the same space and how do we take care of that? I'm gonna have to go back and check the notes. I'm not sure, Andre, if you remember exactly where we landed on that, but I thought we had kind of sketched out what the proposal back on this was, but we weren't, I don't complete cemented, but do you remember exactly, Andre, where we ended up with that?
So Rui, I think we need more time for this. I would suggest you to send a message again in Kubeflow discuss Google group, also maybe in Slack messages. Maybe we can also ask to post an announcement sometime. I can ask Amber for this. But just give us more time to, you know, have an instructions. For now, just I think we need more feedback from the community.
To be clear, you're just asking for integrations initially, right? You're not trying to donate yourself. Are you? Maybe you are.
Yeah, yes, we are.
Okay, cool. Just clarifying.
Yeah, both. I mean, we have some integrations already there, Matthew, with especially with the KSER. We are looking into others too, but yeah, like pipelines. But definitely, we are interested in the donation.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we were trying to do in the KSC is, you know, have some way to say, are there users? Are there contributors? Is there a roadmap? Are there integration use cases? Right, and how do those kind of work with the core units that we have today? And I think we didn't get that memorialized in a follow-up, but you know, it all makes sense, right? I mean, we've got to have in user engagement to kind of pull this through, in my opinion, and we want to make sure also that there's a roadmap that the contributors feel comfortable going with. But there's a period of time there that says, you know, it's going to sustain itself before it becomes, you know, a full-form piece of Kubeflow. So we're trying to figure out how projects like this can live in a space that's as an add-on, and give it a kind of a process that it can go through that's not too many hurdles, but things that you would have to do anyway if you are going to have a sustaining project. Hopefully that helps a little. But we need to get back with that, Rui, and sorry to make you to wait till the very end to bring that up next time.
No problem.
And I'll put you earlier in the meeting.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you. And I'll follow Andre's and everyone's suggestions. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Several repos got archived. What's the gut feel on this one? Are more to come?
Yeah, no overtime, but like maybe I can quickly give an update. So I archived several repos based on discussion that we have already. We're also like discussing 3 more repos, specifically testing KFP text on examples. Like we will provide more updates soon. But if you have any objections or suggestions what we should do with them, let us know as soon as you can.
I mean, the example one, I don't know if we need to archive it, do we? Because like we could still use that name, you know what I mean? Archiving it kind of makes the name unusable in a sense.
Yeah, we need to find the people who can like do something with this repo, maybe like cross-reference to the components examples, for example, right? Today, like this repo has been unmaintained for like several years.
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't cause problems. It probably does. Also, the .github one probably shouldn't have been archived. That one should have just been changed because that one creates the home, like that's like the README for the org. If you know what I mean. What it does is it lets us put an image on when you go to this link on GitHub. So like it lets us we could put a basic introduction that says like, hey, welcome to Kubeflow. That's what that repo does. The README of the .github repo.
Yeah, I understand, but I think like once we make it, we can, you know, add this in the future. But
it also does. It also it's not. I think it also may be the default settings as well for stuff like Stalebot, and these labelbot configs. I don't know if those were still. I don't know if those were being used. I just looked
Yeah,
inside.
you can use .github for some, like issue labeling or PR templates, but I think we don't use it since Tailbot also like being configured for every repo, right? It's kind of like cross-org configuration.
Yeah. I think it should be fine. It's just, yeah, it's just a bit weird to archive it. We could just leave it. You know what I mean? That's my only thought. Yeah.
All right, Francisco, I'm sorry I made you wait. What do you got?
No, it's okay. And there's the brief conversation I was having with Andre and a bunch of other folks. And I think Andre had also noted the kind of broader implication, which was, Feast is an inclusion into Kubeflow. Under what context, who knows? But I did think Feast inclusion into the data working group made sense, and so that was my proposal. And I wanted to, solicit feedback from the community, and I'm the most active maintainer on Feast, which is why I'm spending time talking about it. So I know a lot about Feast, a little bit about Kubeflow. Figure it might be useful.
I mean, Feast is great. I like Feast as a project. What do you want to quickly say what your plans are in the short term for it? I mean, we know we're way over time, but I just want to. I would love to know.
Yeah, I'm happy to outline. So I actually have produced quite a bit of content on the Feast side about like Feast as an overall project and some of the goals I actually have with that. In the broad sense, like and this is my kind of honest review about Kubeflow. My previous employer was moving on to Kubeflow pipelines for our workflows, but a lot of what I spent my career in 12 years building models and deploying them has been on really feature serving. I've deployed a lot of models. I have patents pending for some of them, but I really spent my time plumbing, whether it's for batch models, which and by batch I mean like some job that pre-computes a score for every user in a given database, or online models that like at request time you need some sort of live score for like a credit underwriting type thing, or a recommendation engine, but those can kind of be pre-computed. Anyways, the point being that I spent most of my time within the AI ML space really orchestrating data. And my last employer, we actually launched Feast on that and did very, very well with it. That was part of the reason I was excited about working at Red Hat, to be able to do that for other people. I think it's a gap in Kubeflow, frankly. I think there are a lot of gaps in customer needs that I know people use that we don't currently have documentation for. And I think I personally want to bridge that gap. And I'm doing that with Feast in our own documentation. I think it would be useful to share it and enhance the Kubeflow community with that, candidly. And again, that's not a criticism of Kubeflow. I think Kubeflow is a great product and platform, and I'd like to actually work with them together. And there's work that we're doing within Red Hat to actually have a lot of pipelines orchestrate some of the materialization and Feast and the online store and junk like that. And there's a lot of NLP and generative work that Feast is doing to like make RAG a first-class citizen, right? And so there's some obvious things that make sense there too. Does that provide a little bit more context? I'm happy to go in as much detail as you'd like, obviously.
So my main kind of question is, so what are you actually asking? I mean, so do you just want closer collaboration? Because that's obviously a thing that we should definitely do. Or do you want, obviously longer term, that could lead towards it being a Kubeflow subcomponent? Or is that just, but there's also a precedent to say like Kserve where there's a relationship, but it's not the same project, you know what I mean? Where it's like a separate governance.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think you need to answer the question now. I'm just wondering if your intuition is, let's just collaborate, or if it's something more.
It's definitely, at the minimum, it's let's collaborate. Including into Kubeflow explicitly would be a goal of mine. It's a goal I wrote back in like December, and I can send you the docs where I outline kind of my goals with Feast. And the third would be longer term, what the plan is, because right now I'm the most active maintainer for Feast. We do have other maintainers as well from other companies, and I think that's a good thing. I do think that, and I'd want to like confirm this with the creator of Feast, that he'd be supportive of it being like included. It's part of the Linux Foundation already as a project, but there's some drama or like historical context that there's a private company backing Feast it abandoned it, and then a bunch of other folks started stepping in to maintain it.
I'd be surprised if the original creator wouldn't. I've had discussions with him as well. I think he would. I think he'd be supportive. But it's more about, like, in my mind, Kubeflow has become the home of projects that need for AI and machine learning that need to be truly open, if you know what I mean. And so that's great, and a Feast would be a great fit for that, I think. But the question is making sure that there's maintainers that are actively going to support it, and that's kind of if that's the case, then I'm sure that everyone else feels the same. Is that right, Andre? Would you feel the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great discussion. Thanks for sharing, Francisco. I think we had this, like, similar to Matthew, we discussed this, in December, like this year, or actually in December, like in January, right? Yeah, so let's definitely follow up on this, right? Like, I want to, hear the thoughts from William, also from other folks, and understand, like, what this direction might look like. And I agree, like, we should have a commitment from maintainers that the project will be supported for like X, like 3 to 5 years, or some couple of releases, right? So and we should have enough diversity for people who can support it, right? For a long time.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
5
And,
years. Man, that's a high bar, buddy.
yeah, 5 years is a little bit of a long time horizon. I can say that I've been doing it for at least close to a year, and I've done already 4 releases. And so I do the releases myself, and probably too much. So, like, I'm happy to show data to highlight those things, but I do want it to be more broadly thoughtful.
Yeah, so Andre, I'm hesitant in making any request of any individual person. My main thing I would prefer to make a request of and to see demonstration of is company adoption. So, like, what I mean by that is both users who are willing to contribute, which is very uncommon, and the other side, which is someone who is somehow making money from it existing. So, like, obviously Kubeflow as a project does facilitate that for some vendors. They're mostly represented in this chat, from myself to Red Hat to Canonical to IBM a little bit to HP and a few others. And so there's a clear business reason why Kubeflow continues to exist. But I mean, Feast obviously, if it was part of Kubeflow, might join that, but then it would have to be like that those people who are part of Kubeflow and selling Kubeflow, if you will, are willing to also join in to put their resources towards it. It does sound like Red Hat might be in that category, but that also, I mean, I don't know for a fact, might just be that you're there, right? Is that could also be the case, right? I don't know.
That's a correct assumption, Matthew.
Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, and so that's how every open source project works. So there's usually 1 or 2 people who are core, and then companies who want it to exist hire those people or other things. But for something to be truly become the standard, and I think Feast has maybe accidentally become the standard in a way, which is fine. That's fine. Everything happens randomly. The next step is to make sure that it's like going to be around forever. And the only way that happens is if there's multiple diverse commercial interests in an open source project.
Agree.
I would just say, sorry, Ramesh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Josh.
Feast have been around a long time. We've been dating them for, I don't know, 8 years. I mean, I don't think we have to worry about, maybe we do, but Feast has been around and sustained since, Willem was pushing that, in all over the place for a long, long time. So, I'm very bullish on continuing with Feast and all the projects that have, built some type of user following over the years, right? And sustained over the years, documentation and testing in particular.
Ramesh, you wanted to speak before?
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate on the support perspective from Red Hat, right? It goes without saying that when Sheldon was not supporting the Feast, Red Hat stepped in to adopt that project and take it forward. We are putting a lot of resources into it and to support it. And this is not going to be any different from other projects we are supporting. Obviously, there is a core Red Hat value we want to bring is so that even Red Hat doesn't get corrupt in terms of hey, let's take, this is so much, so much community interest, and let's take this one private. We all saw how the uh, other vendors gone very flat on their face, and we want to commit and say that, hey, we are never going to do that. We are committed to it, and if we are already putting into the product, so by default we are committed to the multi-year there. So you can be assured on that. um, at the same time, we want to attract other likewise uh, different distributions as well as community members in contributing to that, share the ideas there, right? That's our intent. It's no secret there, but it will equally apply to fees too.
Julius?
Yeah, if you check the history, 3 or 4 years ago, we had Feast in Kubeflow/manifest/contributions, and then 1 or 2 years ago, it was removed because it wasn't maintained anymore. So, if I would propose, if you want to start, you could start there again, see how it works out over the releases. And I'm not sure whether you want to migrate into the Kubeflow umbrella in the long term, but I mean, this is something where you could start again.
I think you're referring to the manifests repo, Julius. They obviously maintained the project never went away in the background. It just stopped creating a manifest connection to Kubeflow.
Yeah, I know Feast as an independent project, but they had some integration, and this integration into Kubeflow wasn't maintained, and then it was removed. Maybe you want to start there again. It's just a proposal.
Ricardo.
I think the bigger picture here is that we're still mentioning Fist as an add-on component in the docs, but it's not necessarily true because it was removed on 1.7. And I was talking to Francisco about that, and I believe there's something that's maybe confusing here. We're adding a lot of diagrams with the end-to-end flow for using Kubeflow, and we're always mentioning Fist, but Fist manifests aren't there. So with that being said, Julius, what are your suggestions here? Do you believe we should go from 0 to the add-on promotion? Because if we do so, we need to remove any references to fees to avoid bringing any confusion to users. My understanding is that we shouldn't. Maybe we should just put fees in the same state it was before, then when it was removed the manifest from the repo. And then from that, we can start doing those commitments with contributing more with the Kubeflow releases.
If you want to add manifest again, they need to at least work with Kubeflow 1.9. I think it's the minimum requirement. What you do on the website, that's another question.
I
well,
think that
it's
the
not
website.
1.9. Oh, it was 1.10, but anyways.
Ricardo, I just want to answer that. I think the reason it's on the website is partially because we haven't got to. I've made a PR to update the external add-ons docs. That's the only section that hasn't been updated in years. But the Feast section of the architecture page, I think, is more of an acknowledgement that in a truly open ML platform, it is likely that you are using Feast as your feature store if you are using a feature store. And
I know.
Yeah, that's what it's more saying.
I know. I get that. I think the part is it wasn't clear to me, and this was what I was discussing with Francisco, is that okay, we have Kubeflow to cover all the end-to-end flow for ML training and going from experimentation to production, and there's some feature star in there. How can I integrate my feature star in there? There's no clear instructions on how could I integrate Feast with the newer Kubeflow releases. That's my understanding, that maybe we could support that through the add-on manifest, because the instructions are very old.
Josh, you want to probably say something?
Again, I think if we look at, does Feast have users, contributors? Does it have a roadmap? Does it have use cases that integrate with and as important as short-term energy, which I love, and I'm glad to kind of build the community and other projects as a symbiotic benefit to both, is if things change and we need to put things to bed, right? It's cradle to grave, right? So how do we tell users if a project kind of slows down, that it's not going to be supported, and that there's just there's a good alert to users that they can go and figure out their workarounds. I don't think people mind that things change. It's just a matter that they'd like to be communicated. And the integration and the testing and all that, I think, is driven by user as much as anything. So if users are saying, hey, I want Feast integrated into the manifest, then that's a good sign. Anyway,
I totally agree on that, Josh. Sorry to interrupt you. I understand. I feel the same as you. I think the point, what I would like to bring is that if users are interested, we should at least clearly communicate how to do this. And from my experience with 1.9 release, we didn't have any updates on the documentation on any add-on components. So if user sees that there's this possibility to integrate with Feature Start, and there's some sort of integration level with Feast, and go with the add-on docs, they see that there are no clear restrictions on that. Let's remove Feast in the equation. We can do the same thing for Kserve, for Seldom, for BentoML, all of those add-on components.
So I have actually got a PR which does this already. I need to rebase it after all the. It's been a year since I wrote it, and things have changed. But there is a section explicitly. What I did is I gave every external add-on an introduction page, and then a how do I use this with Kubeflow section. And that may have changed in the last year, so I need to review that the docs are still correct. But it is definitely the next PR that I want to try and big PR for the website that I want to try and get merged. The big one that I did last was getting this styling fixed, because the styling of the website's now much better. But yeah, so that's that. I agree 100%, Ricardo. You are absolutely correct. In fact, so correct that I had the same idea a year ago.
Awesome.
Okay, I'll send the PR if you want to see it.
So like, I think in terms of action, it sounds like maybe there's some async work to do for maybe the steering committee to review it. Or I mean, Matthew, I shared in the chat some documents that I wrote again before joining Red Hat. So maybe that presents some form of an unbiased opinion for the community.
I mean, if you just want to quickly stay on for 20 minutes now and go through the Feast section of the doc that I wrote, and
yeah, happy to.
And if anyone else wants to join us with this journey, I mean, we can end the meeting officially if there's a few other people who want to stay. Ricardo, if you want to, or I don't know, but if not, then we can just yeah. Because so my opinion is, so from a steering committee, I'm not part of the steering committee, but maybe Josh is still there, maybe he's not. I don't know where he is.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to skip out here in a few, but go ahead. I'll give you another few minutes.
So like the steering committee does have to make one decision, which would be around who gets so the reason that we got stalled last time was as soon as I started touching the external add-ons, the thing that came up was who gets to be there. You know what I mean? Like that, and then that blocked any possible update that I was trying to do, because it was like, well, I left, pretty much what I did is I left everyone who was still an active project. Whereas people were then like, oh, well, we don't want to use, like, why does RunML get to be there? Because they're kind of a competing project, you know, things like that, right? And so I was like, well, you know, what do we do? So once we agree on, so we need to either agree that everyone who's currently there gets to stay, or we need to just agree on a list of ones who do get to stay, and then that PR can reflect that. So I think in my mind, the three, which I know Elira is no longer maintained largely, but I would like to keep Elira, I would like to keep Kserve, obviously, and I would like to keep Feast. The other ones that are on there are, which we have to decide on, Josh, are Ben2ML, because that project is no longer maintained, I don't believe. Not the project overall, but the integration with Kubernetes, the Yati piece. Selden Core, which is no longer an open source project, so that one probably does need to be removed. And ML Run, which I think is the strangest one to be on there, and I'm not entirely sure how it got on there in the first place. But I'll just quickly share my screen so everyone can see. Let me just do one thing, which is this Kubeflow website. Where is Kubeflow website? There it is. Oh, that's the manifest. God damn. Website. Oh. So what I'll do is I do need to rebase the PR. That may not be possible. So we can just look at it pretending like it was rebased already, but we'll do it later. Okay, so this is the still very old version of the website now from a year ago, but so forgetting some of the other changes that were proposed since then. But so external add-ons. This was what I proposed that we create, which was adding a warning, which is that they're not owned or maintained. This was also a source of controversy. And maybe the coloring and other things like that, wording, we can discuss that. I put KServe first. So what I did is I gave each one 4 links, pretty much. I said introduction, and then if they had lots of extra stuff, they did get a second one, but most of them just got introduction, getting started in the thing, or just introduction. So the 3 links that matter are introduction, the link to their website, and a GitHub repo, which at least indicates that they have to have a GitHub repo or not, or a system. So they have to, it prevents any non-open source project, but it also, so what I did is, again, I was not writing any of this myself, mostly. I just took the existing content and reformatted it, or removed content that was no longer true because it was years and years old. So in the case of KServe, effectively, the thing that I always added was what is the thing, and some information, and then how do I install it with Kubeflow? In the case of KServe, obviously this one's actually in the manifests, and then you can also just install it from their website, it says. And then in the case of the Models web app, which is actually a component of Kubeflow in some strange connection. So this is why they get a separate page here. But the Feast one was this. So this is what we were here to discuss, which was, again, mostly taken from the content that was already there. So I just formatted it as what is a feature store, what is Feast, and then getting started was installing Feast with Kubeflow. Now, this was probably at the point where Feast was part of the manifest, but maybe this is actually reflective of that.
You know, honestly, we can probably get those manifests back in because, I mean, now we've made some changes, but not much on the Kubernetes front. So I'm like, we can test on the Red Hat side and confirm that it builds correctly. I mean, actually, we have, I know, because we're doing that internally. But we can update. I can cut a PR and create an issue to update the manifest and get that, and get the install a Feast with Kubeflow working.
Yeah,
that's an easy one to do.
Yeah, this is obviously even too much. Like, I think, yeah, like really what I just want to see is, what is the thing? How does it work? And then how do I use it with Kubeflow is really the question I was trying to help answer people. So for example,
Yeah, something quick and high level, and then just
I think that's
outsource
great,
their needs.
but honestly, I'm wondering if, so our documentation falls out of sorts, right? It falls behind. And if you could just link to some other website that has this, or a GitHub page that the project takes care of. I mean, I like the fact that it shows up under a Kubeflow banner and all that, but
So here's my 2 cents. We actually, I've improved the docs quite a bit on the Feast front, and our Git book is nice. Like they do render all the documentation and code examples pretty good. I'm happy to just add it here or remove it or adjust or whatever. I think my overall long-term view is, what does it make sense for Feast as a project, and that is to not just survive by 1 or 2 developers, right? Tecton abandoning it was one example. I don't want to be the main horse that keeps it sustaining alive. I think Red Hat is sponsoring it now, so that is the good news. But I think having it in Kubeflow is what my long-term goal is. The short-term steps to get that, I'm happy to accommodate, if that makes sense. And I'm just being transparent about my view.
I'm glad that to say that these pieces of that Matthew has laid out here are covered, but I don't know that it has to be done. Like if the project has this information somewhere else, I don't know that it has to be done on the Kubeflow.
So Josh, I agree. So that's why mainly what I added was actually links to the sidebar here.
Yeah.
And so my perspective is that in the case of Kserve, let's just forget about Kserve. They're a bit weird. But in the case of Feast, what I really want is actually to get rid of almost all this and instead have just this part, which is, I think these are fine. I do think these are fine. I mean, maybe they're a bit wordy, but
I think they're a little bit wordy.
but look, they almost look AI generated. But I think they were before AI though, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But the
I can cut a PR this week to update this if you want.
like, yeah, the Josh, my main question for you is so if what we did was we agreed on the list of apps which get to be in the sidebar. So
Yeah.
you know, we say Kserve, Feast, and Elira, yes. This one definitely no anymore because it's no longer open source. And ML Run, I think probably should go as well. So the question really just becomes Yati. So yeah, let's check if they had a commit recently.
Well, so if I look at the website today, it has Elira with no what is
yeah,
it?
that's a glitched thing, yeah.
And then there's Kserve, Feature Store, Tools for Serving.
So I moved all this out because this is weird.
Yeah.
And so pretty much, yeah, this part is structured crazily, which is why I was wanting to structuring it like this.
No, I agree. That part makes sense. I guess what I'm saying is that updates to Feast might not need to be coupled with updates to this broader external add-on sections.
Let me be clear. I would prefer if it's an add-on that they take care of their documentation. You know, they update it however they want. I don't mind having these links, but I don't know that it needs to be a Kubeflow PR. We have too much.
So I think I slightly disagree. I think that we should have the introduction, which is why what I was left with was introduction and then the links to their websites. So
yeah, I think that's a
rewrite introduction that they already have. I mean, it's just like, are they cutting and pasting stuff from a website?
So
they already have introduction to Feast or Elira.
I do agree a little bit with Matthew here, where in the sense that a brief introduction can help provide like the uninitiated some lightweight content to say like, well, why would I care about Feast or a feature store? And we can probably chop it down so it's not.
So it's like this, like it should be like this for Feast.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like a
If
picture.
it's like that, if it's like that much, I'm okay with it. But any like 5 pages.
Yeah, that I agree. So that Josh, the only reason it was so long is because that was the content that was already there, and my hope was that we could then change it. But so I agree. So there's 2 questions I think, Josh. Is the first one is, I think we need we do need our own page for one reason, which is that I think to be on the sidebar, you should have to be able to answer the question, how do I use it with Kubeflow? And so because that would be a specific to our website thing.
I'll say
yeah. Yeah, so effectively, in my mind, there should be 2 questions on every one of these introductions, and there should only be 1 page with the exception of Kserve because of its weirdness, which is what is X, and then how do I use X with Kubeflow, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the 2, and then the goal with the what is X should be that it's no longer than 2 paragraphs and a photo. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of and then if it needs more than that, we can discuss it. But so in the case of Kserve, obviously it's a bit more complicated because it's like, hey, this used to actually be part of Kubeflow. And then also there's but I think the structure should be pretty clear, which is we could even have it as separate pages. I guess, does anyone want to have a comment about whether it should be what is X and then how do I use X with Kubeflow here, or whether it should just be an introduction page?
I mean, actually, I do like having it visible as like click buttons for quick navigation, but how many people are going to click the thing to do the drop down? Who knows?
So it's now a lot better. So this is the new Kubeflow website structure, remember? So it's a bit easier to see. But
I love it. I just don't know that we'll keep it up is my problem, but that's fine. I like the way it looks. I think you've done a great job.
Yeah. I agree with, I think what's implicit with what you're saying, which is usage. I care about usage and then making sure it's it's up to date. And those are two hard things. But I
So
think
keeping it up to date doesn't really matter if it's just what is the thing, because that shouldn't dramatically change.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you with that.
The only thing that might, which does affect us though, because and that's relevant to us anyway, is how do I use it with Kubeflow? That could change, but that's our job to change anyway. So, and so I think this helps us answer one question, which is who should be allowed to be here, right? If you can't answer the question, how do I use it with Kubeflow? You shouldn't be able to be here, right? That obviously is logical. So Yati is the only one that's complicated, right? So Selden Core is technically usable with Kserve already, so it's a bit weird for it to be in here, and I don't like the fact that we're advertising in a closed source project now. So
I gotta jump.
yeah.
Okay.
And it might run.
right,
So
thank
you. Yeah. So I guess we just need to think about. So like I can rebase this PR so that it doesn't change anything else because it was changing some other things as well. But what would you? So to be able to answer, so to get this down to one page that says, so
I can do it today. That I can for sure. Now getting it to the Kubeflow integration, that I need to spend a little bit more time with and talk with some of the other folks, but we can make that happen in probably a week.
So I'm not super concerned about it being in the manifest repo. Like it's an acceptable thing for in the same way that Elira doesn't have the answer yet on this page, but is not in the manifest repo because it's a image, you know what I mean? It's a container image.
Right.
It's acceptable to say, hey, to use Feast with Kubeflow, you install Feast using the guide on the Feast website, and then here are the plugins that we have made or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that makes. I mean, I would probably want to make it a little bit smoother than that because I do want to like make sure that we have a good experience. But we can also update that over time, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, I'm just going to stop the recording. So thanks for everyone else who is still watching. But see you next time for that. How do I stop this thing? Oh my gosh, where is the recording button? There we go.